Well, Steve, this brings you back to your old stomping ground here, doesn't it?
Yes, I got my PhD here in 1993. Hebrew Union was founded in the 19th century, and in fact, it's 140 years old this year. I came here to study the Semitic languages so I could understand the Old Testament better, and studied many Semitic languages and other languages as well. It's a well-kept secret. I don't let anybody know how many languages I studied.
Sounds like a lot.
Oh yeah, it was a lot. Aramaic, Hebrew, Akkadian, Ugaritic, Phoenician, and on it goes.
So does it make you a Hebraist?
I am a Hebraist, that's right. It was a wonderful experience here, Hebrew Union, and this is the place I live, basically. This is the Clow Library.
In the library, huh?
Oh yeah. At the time it was 600,000 volumes. I think it's bigger now. This is really interesting. This is from 1524. It's called the Second Rabbinic Bible. The custom was to name books after the first word of the text. So the first word in Genesis is Bereshit. Genesis 1:1 is Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. So Bereshit is the first word, and it means in the beginning. Okay? So this is from 1524.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is it's a rabbinic Bible, so we have the text is in the middle section, and then here we have Rashi's commentary, Rashi, and over here we have Ibn Ezra's commentary.
So this is a commentary.
The commentary. And whether you can notice or not, but this is a different script. This is called Rashi's script. He invented a script.
So you not only had to learn all these languages, you had to also understand the different scripts.
Oh, different
with them
scripts.
as well.
Yeah.
Steve, what else do we have here? I mean, these are fascinating documents. And
well, this is from this is from Germany. Now I'm going to go back just so you can see the beginning of it. You can see these are old. Okay, so here we've got this is the word Bereshit, and you can see that this is pretty beat up.
Yeah.
So if we move it very carefully, here is the this is the beginning of the Toledot of Noah. And it says Ele Toledot Noach Ish Tzaddik and so forth. And it's these are Toledot. Now the interesting that word Toledot is a very interesting word. It's from the Hebrew word yalad, to give birth. It's translated sometimes genealogy, sometimes it's translated history, and it's always actually the story of the descendants. So the Toledot of Noah it's not that much about Noah. In fact, Noah doesn't really say anything in the flood narrative. He doesn't say anything until the incident with Ham later.
Yes.
And the first thing that Noah says is a curse, amazingly enough. But the word Toledot, Genesis is built around that. It begins with Genesis 1:1, right here, Bereshit. And Genesis 1:1 through 2:3 is a kind of a preface or a prologue to the book. And then there are 11 sections. And each of them begin with the word Toledot. Each begin with the word Toledot. So we've got, here it is, this is the Toledot of Noah. And what follows then is the account of the flood. This is a Samaritan Pentateuch. Can you see that Samaritan Pentateuch? Heavy, lifting weights. Okay, so Samaritan Pentateuch, and see, this is a different script. You can see it. It's a little more of a cursive. The Samaritans, the only part of the Old Testament that they accept as their scripture is the Pentateuch. But this is actually in the Samaritan script, and it's pretty, it's amazing. So let me close this up.
Okay.
And can take really good care of these things. And now let's go to, this is a facsimile. This is the Leningrad Codex, lovingly known as L. The original of this is in, the reason why it's called the Leningrad Codex, it's in the public library in St. Petersburg in Leningrad, okay? It's on the shelf B19A. You can actually go into the public library and find this there. This is a facsimile of it. The thing about the Leningrad Codex, it is the oldest complete codex. It's from 1009 AD. But what it says here I am Ani Shmuel Yaakov Ben Yaakov. I am Samuel, son of Jacob. And then he says, I wrote it and I copied it. And the thing about the Leningrad Codex, he followed an exemplar of Ben Asher. Ben Asher is the premier Masoret. But this is the oldest complete manuscript, and all scholarly Hebrew Bibles are based on the Leningrad Codex.
Wow. Well, Steve, what are the oldest documents that we have here?
Okay, how about going from, here we have 11th century, 10th century. These are both AD. We've got something here from the 2nd century BC.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's just a little fragment, and it's Dead Sea Scrolls, and it is from Cave 6. Let's sit down and take a look at this. And this is from Cave 6 at Qumran.
You said Cave 6.
Cave 6. All the Qumran manuscripts are designated by the cave in which they're found. The most famous manuscript is 1Q Isaiah A. That means it was found in the first cave. This is from Cave 6. And there's not a lot of Genesis in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The only book that's not represented at all in the biblical material is Esther. These are actually different. These are different texts. And the interesting thing about this what I'm showing you right here, is that it's not written in the regular Dead Sea Scroll script. For whatever reason, they wrote it in a Paleo-Hebrew type script. So it's actually called 6Q Paleo-Hebrew Genesis. And so the Q stands for Qumran. But this is a section, there's not much of Genesis, but it turns out that this section here comes from the flood narrative. And so, yeah, we can actually see this, but it's giving the details of the size of the ark and various different things like that. Wow. And this is 2nd century BC, and the text is virtually identical in this 10th century and 11th century manuscripts. So 1,200 years later, we have the same text. It's absolutely, it just shows the reliability and how accurately it was copied from 2nd century BC to 11th century AD. Yeah.
Steve, that just overwhelms me again to think that we have a document, the Bible, that has been so preserved over so many years. Is there any other book in history that has that kind of accuracy and so many documents?
No, I don't think so. And also with all the efforts to destroy it. And we still have it. We still have all these old manuscripts, and we have these things, the Dead Sea Scrolls. These were found in jars, in large clay jars in the Dead Sea, and there's thousands of those jars.
Steve, it seems in all the things that we've been looking at and pointing to that there is a lot of history in the Bible. Is that how you see it?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the way to look at biblical narrative, but not just narrative, but poetry as well, is to recognize it as a threefold aspect. And I think the problem with evangelicals is they haven't understood that all three things are true of the Bible. And the first thing is that it's an accurate historical account. Okay, and not only that accurate historical account is portrayed in such a way I call it a magisterial literary presentation. And the combination of the magisterial presentation of the accurate historical account ends up in producing a foundational theological treatise. So it has those three aspects. And there are a lot of false dichotomies out there, people saying, well, if it's historical, then it can't be literary. If it's literary, it can't be historical. If it's theological, it cannot be historical, and so forth. So those 6 false dichotomies. And those come actually from a Jewish scholar named Meir Sternberg. He didn't call it theological literature, he called it ideological literature. But he understood that the Bible is literary. In fact, he said it's literature. He didn't even he didn't even say that literary was good enough. He said it's literature. It actually is literature, and you study it that way, and understand. His book is The Poetics of Biblical Narrative, Ideological Literature, and the Drama of Reading. It's wonderful, and you can then see how the literary portrayal brings things out.
Yeah.
Like the way in Genesis 1 through 2, 3, the way in which the material is presented and it's a clear polemic against the other creation accounts that were in existence in the ancient Near East. It presents the sun in Genesis 1 through 2, 3. The sun is just the sun. It's just something that God created. Whereas in the ancient Near East, the sun is a vicious, capricious god of judgment of the day, and the moon is a capricious god of judgment of the night. That's why it says in Psalm 121, the sun shall not smite you by day, or the moon by night. It's not talking about sunburn and moonstroke. It's talking about the idea of these ancient Near Eastern gods. And so we find in Genesis 1 through 2, 3 that they're not even named. And because they're not named, they don't have any, they can't be sentient. Because in the ancient Near East, name is not just what a name is for us. It is the essence of something.
Yes.
It's the attribute. It's the essence, not just a label.
So in the names of God, they were just not names. They were pointing to His nature.
Exactly. Yeah, Yahweh is pointing to the fact that He's the self-existent one.
Steve, when you say one of those characteristics, the first one you mentioned is that the Bible is accurate history.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we know, all of us have known for a long time that the history of the Bible has been under severe attack.
Right.
And yet it appears that archaeology is again and again confirming that history is true. Is that what you mean by saying it's accurate history?
The presentation is such, and the perspective of the writers, that they believe they were talking about real events.
Okay.
It's very obvious that because of the way in which they insist that the next generation learn their history, they set things up in monuments so the next generation will remember what happened here. Like, for instance, the crossing of the Jordan and things like that. The authors will actually say to their readers, they'll say, like for instance in Joshua, he'll say, you can see that today. Now, why would you say that as an author? You can see that. You can see the pile of stones we put over Achan and his family because of his sin. You can go there if you want to today. You can dig through that pile and find the skeletons down there. Why would you do that if you knew it wasn't true?
Right. So it was written in a manner that said this is true history.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's other things too. There are like footnotes. There are comments by the author of little details which would be very interesting to the author as a historian. He'll give details. They'll give dates. And even in the flood narrative, that's when the first dates are given. There's 5 fixed dates that are involved with the flood narrative. Sources are mentioned. Historical scholars today will give their sources. So we find out what the sources of kings are and so forth. Well, the sources are given.
Well, Steve, let me ask you some questions here as you're going through this.
Absolutely.
Because these are questions that I hear all the time.
Okay.
I hear them from my students as well. And the first thing is you're talking about days here. Do you see these as literal days? Is that what the text is telling us? Or you know what other people think, that this is just a poetic, different
Well, first of all, it's not poetry. If this is narrative, what I refer to this text, it's an ordinary Hebrew narrative text with extraordinary content. What that means is that you should understand the words, the normal way in which those Hebrew words are understood. The word yom, it means day. Can it mean, by extension, just like in English, David's day, indefinite period of time? However, the foundation of its usage is what we mean by a day. It's a 24-hour day.
And I know that word has been pulled out a lot. It seems to me what you're saying here is that if you just pull the word yom out and try to make it something else, you're also losing the fact that it's in this context of the historical narrative.
Right. Yom here is it's clearly just it just means a day. The only way you'd want it to mean a longer period of time is if you impose an alien concept, a hermeneutical concept, to the text and say, well, I think that these are ages, and therefore yom has to mean ages. What we have to always do is start with the text. Yeah. If we start with the text, yom means day.
Well, we were just talking to Paul earlier. We were talking about these paradigms and how powerful those are. Is that what you're referring to, that someone has a different paradigm and then therefore trying to read the text into that paradigm?
Yeah, and as a result, they also say that, Old Earth evangelicals, what they'll say is that the text is poetic. It's a mythical, poetic text that teaches truth, but it's not. It does not represent what it appears to be representing. And what I'm saying is a Hebraist, and I'm not saying I'm the world's greatest Hebraist in any sense, but the world's greatest Hebraist all affirm that this is a narrative. They say that that's one of the unique features of the Genesis accounts of creation and the flood is that they are narratives, because in the ancient Near East, they are done in epic poetry, which is very different. And here we have narrative to indicate that this is historical. The ancient Near Eastern accounts are so different, with Tiamat being this monstrous serpent goddess who wants to devour Marduk, all this kind of stuff, and he calls the winds in to fill her up, and she blows up, and then he takes her carcass and makes the universe out of it. That's so different what we have here. God saying, Yehi Or, let light be, and Vayhi Or, and light was. So it's just so different, so different here.
Well, that's a powerful thing that you said, that all Hebraists look at this and understand this is historical narrative.
Oh, yeah.
So when we come to the passage that talks about the creation of Adam and Eve, you're seeing that as a clear historical event, which would stand in direct opposition to the conventional paradigm that's taught everywhere, that Adam and Eve evolved out of a long, long process.
The biblical text is not compatible with the standard, the conventional paradigm. You can't put the two together. You can't do it. And my research is showing that this is actually historical narrative means that they can't do it. It's not poetry. It's not statistically admissible.
Well, Steve, this is interesting to me, because you not only see this as a Hebraist, linguistically, as historical narrative, but you have done scientific research to also show that it is. Tell me more about that.
It was with an ICR-sponsored project called the RATE Project, which stands for Radioisotopes and the Age of the Earth. And they let this Hebraist in with all of the geologists and physicists, these brilliant geologists and physicists. But what I wanted to do was to quantify. People, as I say, Hebraists, they know intuitively that it is narrative, but can we prove it? Can we do it mathematically or statistically? So what I did was I worked with two statisticians. I counted the number of a particular verb type called a vayikol. It forms the backbone of Hebrew narrative, okay? And so I counted the number in all of the passages. I went through all the passages of the Hebrew Old Testament. I identified which passages were they considered to be a narrative, which were poetry. And then the statistician, he picked random number generator, which ones I would analyze. I counted the number of vayiktols in each passage, and we showed statistically that as you moved from poetry to narrative, that the number of vayiktols went way up to like above 50%, and the other direction it was down 4% or something like that. And then my question is, could you use this in some way to predict, based upon the number of vayiktols, whether a passage was poetry or narrative? We did it at a 99.5% confidence level, but it turned out that the difference between narrative and poetry is so great that the band of all the possible logistic regression curves is actually quite narrow. And as a result, looking just at Genesis 1 through 2:3, the probability that it is narrative is between 0.999942 and 0.999987. So that means it is. That's narrative. And then once you realize that the biblical narrators also believed it was history and presented it as history, and then we believe, as Mayor Sternberg, who's Jewish, recognizes that he pointed out, he says, you Christians believe in inspiration. And so if the authors of the Bible are believe that they are writing real history and presenting as real history, then as believers' inspiration, you must believe that it's real history.
Well, Steve, help me understand here and help people understand that this Genesis 1 through 11 has become very contentious.
Yeah.
And walk through this. What are these contention points and why?
Well, obviously, Genesis 1 through 3 is creation by God, direct creation in 6 days.
Is there something meaningful in that?
Well, the 6 days of creation followed by the day in which the Lord hallowed that special day, the Sabbath day. So it's 7 days. And what's interesting is that a year is based upon the movement of the earth around the sun. A month is basically the lunar periods. But the week that we organize, really the way we organize our life, is based on the fact that God created the 6 days, and then we have a day off. I mean, if we never had a day off ever, we would be in big trouble. But can you imagine organizing your life on the basis of the month or the year? But the Lord knew that the week was the perfect way to do it. And we're told in Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11, that the reason for the Sabbath was to remember that he had created the earth in 6 days. Then we're told elsewhere, also in the tabernacle legislation, that he had created the earth in 6 days. This is very important. Something's repeated several times that the Lord had created in 6 days. Now, he could have created instantaneously, but he chose to do it this way. I think for us,